Chapter 31. I am done revised, so please enjoy the chapter. Estira, come here for a minute. Estira, who was writing a treatment journal for a patient who just visited, got up from her seat at the call of her teacher, Dr. O'Malley. Dr. O'Malley was not a particularly strict or scary teacher, but today somehow his expression wasn't good. Estira noticed and quietly sat down in the chair next to Dr. O'Malley. I heard a rough story from Jason, and it looks like you're making something strange these days. Ah, no more words were needed. Estira noticed what Dr. O'Malley was saying and tried to explain it urgently. But Dr. O'Malley came first. Give up. Yes? Estira looked at the doctor, but Dr. O'Malley only shook his head. I don't like it because he seemed to be playing with Miss Florentia's impulses, Estira. Impulsive? What can she know? She is just a kid who is only 8 years old now. I know you are so desperate and too excited about a joke like that. Dr. O'Malley was accusing her. Although he did not raise his voice or expressly impressed, Estira could fully feel it. No, sir, Miss Florentia is really trying to help me. Estira said, blinked her eyes. It doesn't matter if he underestimates me, but I can't stand it when Miss Florentia is spoken of like that. She is sincerely trying to help me. Oh, Estira. Dr. O'Malley sighed as if the ground was full. In the end, there was a sound of clearing his throat. I understand your desperate desire to go to the academy, but not this year. Just give up. Dr. O'Malley had pushed her a second time. It's all for you. Are you really thinking about me? Estira bowed her head to hide her doubts about her teacher. Besides, I've already written a recommendation for Jason. You must have someone else to write you a recommendation letter. Dr. O'Malley continued to try to persuade Estira. Don't be greedy. Will I write a letter of recommendation for you next year? Even if it was greed, there was nothing to say. Estira bites her own lip. It was almost a miracle, even for her, who is an ordinary girl and comes from the countryside. She got a job where she could make money while working on the medicine, and even got the chance to learn pharmacy under famous Lombardy's doctor. So, Dr. O'Malley was right. It could be greedy to aim for a job as a researcher at the academy too. Estira understood the criticism in the doctor's eyes. Teacher, said Estira in a quiet voice, I want to do as much as I can. Estira, even though I said this, I want to live up to the expectations of Miss Florentia, sir. Dr. O'Malley, who was trying to push again, shut up when the name of Florentia came out. My lady told me that I could do it. She said she would help me, and she would let me go to the academy. Estira laughed strongly as she recalled that time. As you said, she may be still a kid, but I do believe, she said, she would make Estira's dream come true. She did not laugh when she heard a dream that was too big for the common people, never mind a woman. Rather, she will help her, she promised to her. Those pretty green eyes of that time were engraved in Estira's heart. You keep doing reckless things like this. Even if I say I won't write a letter of recommendation? Dr. O'Malley ended up swaying. Originally, it was a conversation meant to end soon because Estira was silent. She was a disciple who usually speaks little and always obeys. He didn't know she would be stubborn like this. If he can't beat Estira's will, his position as the doctor becomes difficult. Yesterday, Vice Lombardi called Dr. O'Malley. When he arrived, he thinks that it was a regular visit, but Viz and Jason's father, the president of the planned medical company, sit together. It was not surprising because he knew the relationship between the two of them, where money and friendship go hand in hand. But when the president of the planned medical company complained about Estira in front of Viz, he was truly surprised. He didn't even think that he would have such ambitions. The president said, I don't think it makes sense for such a girl to dare to ask for a doctor's recommendation, so why don't you throw her right away? And he said that he was concerned because his student was not aware of her place, and he said the doctors shouldn't make him worry about it again in the future. In a word, he said that he should not write recommendations to anyone, including Estira, for the time being. In response, Dr. O'Malley made the oath, saying that he would take responsibility and make Estira give up on the academy. It was because he thought about the timid personality of Estira. He thought that if he just says a few words, she would calmly give up on the academy. Think well. Dr. O'Malley was convinced this time that Estira would break her stubbornness. She hesitated for a while, but like a lie, Estira nodded her head. Yes, sir. I'm sorry. I'll trust Miss Florentia. Ha! Oh. Dr. O'Malley was shocked. He thought that he used a word firmly, no matter what Estira's will. And now, he looking at Estira disgustingly. He clicked on his tongue. It was nonsense from the beginning. Anyway, she believes the words of an 8-year-old kid, and she doesn't care about what her teacher says. The doctor then had the idea that he should cut Estira's salary because of this problem. You're making me troubled in the end. Yes, troubled? Estira's head tilted, but Dr. O'Malley turned back and said coldly, You don't need to know. Go. With pent-up feelings, Stira could only say goodbye. However, it couldn't be helped that one corner of her heart was steamed continuously. My heart was pounding. I took my palm-sized tube and breathed slowly and deeply. The lid was covered, but the pungent scent of the lipsy leaves irritated my nose. I'll open it. Estira nodded her head in agreement. The crack. With a small noise, the lid opened and the hardened ointment appeared. I carefully touched it with my finger. The flat surface inside the container reaches the tips of my fingers. This time, I applied the ointment on my fingertips to the back of my hand. Beeswax with vegetable oil melted at body temperature and gently applied. At the same time, it seems a little hot, and the feeling of cold spreads through the skin. Done. It was perfect. In case you don't know, I've been using it in the same place every day for the past 5 days, said Istira, showing her wrist to me. Sometimes the sore wrist pain disappeared, and my skin improved. Strangely, maybe it also has such an effect, miss. Compared to the other wrist, it felt strangely smooth. As Istira said, I put the ointment lid back and on. I, I put the ointment lid back on and gently put it down. Then I asked Istira, Istira, do you have anything you want? Istira shook her head quietly at my unexpected question. Think carefully what Istira needs, regardless of the amount. Well, regardless of the amount, Istira complained seriously for a while, then replied cautiously, Then I want to have a small house in Lombardy town. As if she was embarrassed, while talking, Istira scratched her cheek. Is that so? I see. By the way, why are you asking such a question all of a sudden, miss? It's a waste to change this medicine to just 2 letters of recommendation and a scholarship. Only? Estira was confused as she alternately looked at the ointment and me. But I was serious. This ointment wasn't just for Grandpa and Brockle. I smiled at Estira, who was still confused, saying, Don't worry. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. It was a day when it rained softly. It was a nice rain after a long time, but it wasn't very good weather for Lulak, who had poor knees. But while rubbing his uncomfortable knee with his hand, he looked at the smiling face the librarian Grandpa. Brockle laughed in vain. Are you not in good condition? Definitely good, while you... Lulak still said with a big smile. I was regretted that Clarivan was going to work as a side job. He said that his business partner was Gallihan. Lulak first questioned his ears. He suddenly visited and informed that he was going to do business with Gallihan, and he said Gallihan seems to be a very smart person, and he rarely even praised others. No matter how it is, I don't know what kind of business he's talking about until the end. Lulak didn't stop laughing while complaining that much. Brockle laughed together as he looked at him. But why did you call me today? Oh, that's it. I mean, a crazy guy is asking you and me to write a recommendation. As if suddenly thinking of someone, Lulak's eye wrinkles became thicker. Now the tail of his mouth was getting caught in the ears. Brockle knew him for over 30 years, but it was the first time he had ever seen Lulak's nasty look. Brockle tilted his head. Then he heard a little knock. Come in, as if Lulak waited. When the door opened and the little girl appeared, Brockle wanted to see what kind of joke this was. Hi! It was Lulak's 8-year-old granddaughter, Florentia, who nodded. End of chapter 31. Chapter 32. I concealed my trembling heart as much as possible and entered my grandfather's office. Fortunately, the weather was also helping. The sky was cloudy and it was raining. Oh, goo-goo, did our granddaughter come? Grandpa opened his arms wide towards me with a slightly shaky face. Grandpa! I ran as it was and struck in my grandfather's arms. Haha! Next to him, Brockle was laughing with a surprised face, looking at me and my father. It was probably the first time he had seen this kind of grandfather. Well, I also sympathized with it. Lulak, Lombardy's unfolded looks like this. If he had seen me in my previous life, he might have been surprised and moved back. I stepped out of my grandfather's arms and said hello again to Brockle. Hello, librarian Grandpa. Haha, it's been a while, Miss Florentia. After my father got busy, he seemed to welcome me even more because he didn't go to the library often. I didn't know the person who was trying to get the recommendation letter was a lady. Brockle said to me, It's not me, it's a recommendation for Estira. She is a student of Dr. O'Malley. Ah, I know. She is still young, but she is a pretty smart kid. Yes, Estira knows a lot about medicinal herbs. So today, I brought the medicine that Estira made to show to you too. I took the medicine jar out of the little handbag I was holding. Does it have a peculiar smell? Said my grandfather, sniffing his nose. He was looking forward to what kind of medicine was in the jar. Of course, I had no intention of satisfying my grandfather's curiosity right away. I opened the lid of the jar and approached Brockle. Does your finger hurt a lot? How did you know that? Brockle said in amazement. People with heavy-handed occupations, when they get older, it is common to develop calluses on their fingers. I could tell just by looking at Brockle's fingertips slightly bent. That's what Estira did. Those who hold a lot of pens like grandfathers can get sick in the joints of their fingers. I turned all the preliminary to Estira and scooped up the ointment with my fingertips. Please, hand. At my words, Brockle, who looked at my grandfather for a moment, stretched out his sore hand. Obviously, the fingers holding the pen were bent in an uncomfortable shape just by looking at them. I carefully applied the ointment to each finger. The reaction came immediately. Oh! Brockle was surprised and looked at the ointment with strange eyes. How are you? It was cloudy, so the throbbing was worse, but I applied much so that it was absorbed well into the joints, even with small hands. In fact, it was okay to do it in moderation. But I looked closely at Brockle's bent fingers. The only place for me left alone in my previous life was books. Brockle keeps the library until late at night for me and sometimes teaches me if there is something I don't know in the book. It may have been a small favor to someone who held the position of librarian, but it was a great comfort to me at that time. To express my gratitude at that time, I applied the ointment to Brockle's hand. Come on, you're done. How are you now, librarian grandpa? The feeling of coolness was stronger than before. Thanks to that, I can barely feel the pain. So this is the usefulness. Hey, isn't it? Broccoli was smelling the stretching scent of it as if he didn't like the scent of Hipsy from his hand. Florentia, then my grandfather called me. It seemed that he didn't like something to see Brockle with a blunt face. How about this, Grandpa? Perhaps it was envious of Broccoli. I felt like I would laugh, but I quickly took the ointment so my grandfather didn't feel disappointed. As I approached, I said boldly to my grandfather, who looked at me blankly, "The knee, huh? Grandpa's knee, please." Grandpa asked in amazement, "How do you know that my knees are not good?" He had sometimes tapped it like this, I said, repeating my grandfather's habitual behavior. Florentia. Grandpa looked at me and couldn't say anything for a while. He seemed very impressed that I knew grandfather's pain. Grandpa, come on! At my rush, my grandfather rolled up the hem and showed me the right knee. I also took a lot of ointment and applied it hard on my grandfather's knee, with the thought of becoming a filial granddaughter and massaging his sore leg. Unlike Brockle, my grandfather was quiet. He only looked down at the knee where the ointment was applied, with the eyebrows narrowed slightly. This. Finally, Grandpa opened his mouth with a serious face. He moved his sore knee a few times and looked at me with a big question mark on it. This. What is this, Florentia? It's a medicine made by Estira. So what kind of medicine? Grandpa, surprised, kept folding and unfolding his knees. It seemed strange that the pain was not easily felt because of the cool feeling. A little bit modified of Estira on a medicine that has been passed down from generation to generation. How's it, Grandpa? The answer was already revealed in my grandfather's expression, but I dared to ask. How is it, Grandpa? Grandpa nodded and replied, If she can make this kind of medicine, she deserves my recommendation. Broccoli also said with a smile, I am already looking forward to seeing what kind of results will come when such talent starts researching at a well-equipped academy. The two of them were already in the moment to write even 10 letters of recommendation to Estira. Estira probably needs a scholarship, research, and living expenses. That's it. Grandpa agreed so easily. This loosens up my pocket money, which I try to add to Estira in case of an emergency. But this is not the end. I could see my grandfather reaching for the jar as if he were possessed. I just covered the lid and held it in my hand. Florentia, Grandpa looked at me in embarrassment. I smiled and said, Estira says this medicine is very easy to make. Is it easy to make such a drug? Grandpa seemed to be as shocked as when he first applied for the medicine. So she was told me that she likes to give some of these medicines to my grandfather and Mr. Brockle, who write recommendations. Just as expected, haha, she is a good child. There was a big smile on my grandfather's face. Brockle is also ho ho ho. He seemed very happy to see him laughing and stroking his beard. As I watched the reaction of both of you, I threw a sneak peek. Wouldn't others like it then? The sound of grandfather's laugh stopped. My grandfather's eyes met my eyes, and it seemed like I could see the inside of my grandfather's head for a moment. Dozens of numbers seemed to pass quickly. Then Grandpa laughed as he looked at me. Okay, I think so many people will like it. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. Then I'm going to bring this good news to Estira. Both of you, goodbye. Florentia greeted politely and energetically opened the door of the office and went out. I could hear the light footsteps hitting and moving away quickly. It seemed to be running to Estira in a hurry. That's a very strange medicine. Brockle opened the jar that Florentia left and looked at the yellowish ointment in it. The moment the drug touched the skin, the pain in the joint, which had been persistently annoying, quickly covered up with the cool sensation. And according to Florentia's explanation, it wasn't just the pain relief effect. The medicine used as the raw material is said to have the effect of healing wounds and injuries itself, so it was one stone and two. Then Brockle realized a strange thing. It is so quiet that Lulak passes by after Florentia leaves. Holy Lord! Brockle cautiously sang Lulak. It was then, ha ha ha, that guy, ha ha. A big laugh burst out of Lulak, so that Brockle was startled. Lulak was laughing loud enough to lift his shoulders. As I reached this age, I thought there would be no more surprises. Lulak once again laughed, as the image of Florentia, who was talking loudly, came to mind. For 2 letters of recommendation is not enough with scholarships to give her part of the proceeds from selling this drug. That was the condition of Florentia. It was a legitimate request. This magical drug was Estira's invention. The percentage of the required revenue was also very reasonable. The conscientious trader made such a condition that he would no longer negotiate and accept it without saying anything. So Lulak had no choice but to accept it. Isn't it possible that you can show a unique appearance to your young granddaughter? Of course, if it was someone else, it would have been absurd. Perhaps that thought was all contained in that little head, and Lulak's mind ran over it. Brockle, yes, Lord, aren't our Florentia smart? Brockle laughed at Lulak's question and nodded. The future of Lombardy is bright. Right, the future of Lombardy. It could have been the main lead of adults with a child who was only 8 years old. However, Lulak couldn't take his eyes off the small pot in front of him for a while. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. The day has come for Estira to leave. It was just a few days after I had a conversation with my grandfather. While sponsoring, my grandfather shot me hot. She said she couldn't have Estira live in a dormitory carrying a letter of recommendation from Lombardy and bought a home near the academy. In addition, permission from the dean of the academy in particular allowed Estira to come in a little faster than others and to adjust in advance. All that was left for Estira was to work hard at the academy and wait for the sales of the ointment to accumulate at Lombardy Bank in her name. In front of the carriage, waiting for all the luggage to be loaded and the coachman holding the reins of the horse, Estira saw me in tears. How can I repay Miss Florentia? Ah, it's all an opportunity you got because Estira is excellent, I said with a smile. But Estira shook her head and cried, if there is any way I can repay this favor. I stared up at Estira and asked, you think so, Estira? Of course. Please tell me anything, miss. Estira was touched by my words. I hesitated for a moment and said, then, Estira, I have one request. It's not a small request. It was the death of my father, Galliahan Lombardi, in his mid-30s. And in the area where the academy is located, there is a medicinal herb called raw that grows. Make Lenbrews remedy with it. The Lenbrews remedy. Estira's voice trembled. How can a lady see that the herb called rosette becomes a remedy? I didn't answer. Miss, Estira's trembling eyes looked at me. I also looked at Estira, face to face. And at some point, the trembling of those eyes stopped looking at me. She seemed to have found her answer and asked, can I make a cure for such a rare disease? I doubt that I can do such a great job. It is an overly heavy burden to put on a person who is just leaving the road to become a researcher. But I replied, looking straight at Estira. Oh, Estira can do it. I can make a remedy. Because you are the one who will make the remedy. Just 3 years after my father died, I heard the news that a scholar named Estira, who once studied at the Lombardy Clinic, created a remedy for Telenbrew based on an herb called raw. However, in this life, we have to make a cure a little faster than that. That's why I gave the clue raw together. Estira will definitely be able to do it. This was the reason why I had to send Estira to the academy quickly at any cost. End of chapter 32. Chapter 33. Dillard, who is currently in charge of the Lombardy general manager, entered the mansion early in the morning under the call of the Lord. Dillard line has been a family member of Lombardy for generations, and their loyalty has been tremendous. As a joke, it was said that the emperor of the Dillards was Lombardy, not the real emperor. It's been a while since you're here, Romans. At the mansion porch, the butler politely greeted him. Are we going to the Lord's office? No. Today, there was a person who called you to the meeting room. Meeting room? Dillard answers as if it were a big deal while stroking his short beard. This Lombardy's general manager was old, but never stepped back from the front lines for a moment. Still, all of the Lombardy's contracts and advances have gone through his desk. Obviously, although his job does not require him to meet Lord in person, he was called in hastily, and he was nervous, thinking that something might have happened. but come into the conference room. Then he asked the deacon, "Are there any other people here besides me?" The deacon replied with a small smile. "Currently, Brace, Herrins, Bilkis, Devons, and Weirs have already arrived. You are the last in Rome." Dillard's face became more confused. All the families the deacon spoke of were those who were serving Lombardy like Dillard. Like the Dillard family, some people were in charge of major businesses such as banking, education, transportation, agriculture, and architecture. Dillard, who quickly stepped in, hurriedly opened the door of the meeting room. Lord of Herrians was greeted Dillard first. "Oh, it's been a long time. Do you know what the hell is going on?" However, he was the same as he shook his head. Romans, the general manager, searched for an empty sit down and asked the same question to Bray's first son, who was sitting next to him, but the answers were similar. "I don't know well either. I suddenly got a call yesterday. It's true, it's not common to call them like this." Romans was right. It was only at the New Year's party at the beginning of the year and Lulak's birthday banquets that this number of people gathered at once. Then the door opened and another person came in. No, even you, Clarivan. It was Clarivan with a drowsy face. While looking at the middle for a moment, Clarivan naturally came to the side of Romans and sat down. Romans Dillard, who was briefly surprised by the appearance of Clarivan, said hello in a small, low-key voice. "It's been a long time, Clarivan." Clarivan, who rubbed his eyes as if tired, replied with a small voice, raising his head a little. "Yes, father." Clarivan's surname Pellet was his mother's surname. Dillard's illegitimate child, Clarivan, grows up and lives apart from the Dillard's family. The vassals in the left, who were familiar with the relationship of the rich man, pretended not to hear the greetings shared by the two. After a while, Lulak Lombardi opened the door of the conference room and entered. Except for the old Wares Lord, everyone jumped up and greeted them from where they were sitting. Lulak laughed as he beckoned to sit at them. Everyone was here. Contrary to what they were worried about, his smiley face looked very pleasant. Thanks to this, the gathered vassals became more suspicious. "The reason I called everyone today is—" There was tension in the middle of the seat. When Lulak beckoned once, the attendant came out carrying something on the tray. Sweet. One small pot was placed in front of each person. He couldn't figure out what it was, tightly tied with a pretty red string. What is the smell?" asked Dillard, carefully bringing his face to the jar. "It smells cool, but it's the first time I smell it." "I know, right?" Those who are in a hurry already lifted the jar and even shaken it slightly. Lulak, who looked at them with a smile, said, "It's about the medicine?" I had guessed at the bitter smell. The vassals stared at each other's faces in the distance. "Can I open it?" When Clarivan asked, Lulak nodded coolly. To the vassals, who quarreled back and forth for curious minds and unwrapped the red ribbon, Lulak explained more. "It's a versatile ointment applied to a painful place. Especially, it's a special medicine for muscle pain and people with poor joints like me." Oh, as they got older, the vassals that had one or two uncomfortable places looked into the ointment while shining their eyes even more. "Oh, but they said don't apply it to skin peeling and or bleeding wounds." Devons raised his index finger and said firmly, "But why?" Finally, Devon's lord asked in a small voice. Lulak smiled as if he had been waiting for the question. "Do you know who made the ointment?" Well, that's my granddaughter." Soon after Lulak's ha 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 ha, followed by loud laughter. Speaking of a granddaughter, the current third generations of Lombardy's direct lineage were still young. Lorraine, the oldest, was only 11 years old, but the granddaughter made it. Everyone was wondering if there was one more granddaughter of a grown-up that we didn't know. Then Clarivan asked in a quiet voice, "Is this Florentia?" Lulak, who couldn't stop shaking his shoulders, stopped laughing and looked at Clarivan. The vassals in the middle of the left were rather fuzzy and noisy. "If it's Florentia Galliahans, she's still young." However, it didn't seem like they were joking about Lulak, who proudly boasted that it was made by her granddaughter. Or Clarivan looking at that Lulak. Ha ha ha. Suddenly, Lulak laughed again. Everyone, it was when they were saying that it was a joke. "I'm not kidding. It's really made by my granddaughter, Florentia. It's a collaboration with a scholar named Estira, who entered the academy this year as a researcher with my recommendation." "Aha, a joint venture. Ha ha ha. It was a collaboration." People burst into laughter only then. "Well, it is. Even though it was made by a young child. What the hell was going on? Isn't it a collaboration with a great scholar? If you look at it, you must have picked the color of this ribbon." That was the idea of the vassals. "It's a product that will be sold in earnest from next month. At that time, you won't be able to buy it because it doesn't exist. So thank you. I think Lord is very proud of her granddaughter." Herrin's lord laughed and struck him. "I don't know how far you'll believe me, but you should have seen my granddaughter come and negotiate with me with the ointment." "You mean negotiating with the lord?" "The trails were amazing." It was because they took quite a long time to sit down, laugh, and talk with Lulak. The average child cries hard even when held in Lulak's arms. But she negotiated with such a lord. That kid, Florentia, isn't afraid of me. She's a very nasty kid. Oh, that's amazing. It was an unbelievable atmosphere that everyone said that Florentia created the ointment. He seemed to be dubious to say that she wasn't scared of Lord, and she was a kid too. By the way, I didn't know if the Lord was so proud of his grandchildren. At this meeting, Lord of Ware's family, who is the oldest and has a strong relationship with Lulak, said with a smile, "The old guy has to be very smart." It seemed like a joke, but he laughed without worrying about Lulak, because he thought something was wrong. He was the one who rushed onto the carriage from early morning just to get the ointment from the Lord's proud granddaughter. Despite the unique cold, he looked down at the parcel in front of him with deep eyes without knowing what was inside. Then he touched the end of the red ribbon with his fingers. It was the same color as the color of the braids that Florentia wears most often. "Clarivan, why do you do that?" Dillard, who was watching him from the side, called his son in wonder. "Maybe you are thinking the same with your father and with them." At first glance, Clarivan's eyes looked at the loves and chatters with a comfortable look. But in the middle, there were moments when their eyes just stayed on. Everyone will be trying to figure out why Lord put everyone together and showed this ointment. In the kingdom of Lombardy, it was the job of the vassals to read and practice the Lord's intention. Everyone seemed to be talking without thinking about it, but that's just the appearance. "Father, don't you even think about how and when to distribute this ointment at the top of Lombardy?" Dillard nodded, shrugging his shoulders as if he had been caught. "And one more thing." Clarivan once again took a red ribbon in his eyes. Something that could be called instinct was telling Clarivan, "Watch the owner of this red ribbon." Clarivan cherished a small round jar in his hand. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. "Class is over. I think red is a good match for Florentia," Lorraine said, tying a red braid to my head. "Lara's white looks good." I wasn't just saying it. Is it because of Lorraine's white skin, or because of the blue eyes inherited from Angena's? The white color went well with Lorraine. "Thanks." She praised me first, but she feels embarrassed to receive praise. She was so kind, innocent, and tender-hearted that he wouldn't be like Belsac, a child that was born in the same boat. It was a flower that was too fine to wither without being loved by living alone in a far place. I said to Lorraine while thinking about that, "Don't you like dolls? There was something that came in as a gift for my birthday before, but I hate dolls. Would you like to have Lorraine?" "Really? Wow, good." Lorraine showed off a happy smile that I would show when I got a gold bar from someone. I, give me your present too, Tia." The twins made a cry as they sorted out the books and cushions I was trying to organize. "Okay, I see. There was only one reason I was chatting with kids like this now." I looked back, pretending to yawn loudly. I'm still watching. I'm watching. Clarivan was looking at me with eyes that seemed to shoot a laser. Even before the start of class, he asked questions to me whenever he had spare time throughout the class. Then, after the class is over, he is doing that outright. I'm worried about it. But that doesn't mean that you can't say, "I'm going to die because your glares hurt." I am an innocent child who knows nothing right now. An innocent child. Someone patted me on the shoulder of memorizing the spell to myself. "Wow, that's a surprise." "Why are you so surprised?" It was Clarivan. "Well, you were over there until now. Why are you doing that, sir?" I asked with a disgusting smile as much as possible. "Come with me, yeah?" Lorraine and the twins who were next to him also tilted their heads. "I am not wrong. I told you to go with me, Florentia. What did I do wrong?" End of chapter 33. Chapter 34. I'm also on my way to meet Galliahan, so let's go along. "Okay." I am also. Not only me, but the kids around me nodded as if convinced. Lorraine wondered if the small sweeping of her chest would cause me to be dragged by Clarivan and cause a soul. Clarivan narrowed his eyes for a moment as if he was not greedy for everyone's reaction. "Well, then shall we go?" "Okay, go." The twins noticed their stinging eyes and then got up quietly from their seats. "Goodbye." Then, before even catching him, he greeted him and ran away. "Hi, Florentia." "Goodbye, sir." Lorraine quickly greeted him like she would fall behind and moved away from us. Belsac, who was waiting for his sister at the doorway, looked at me once and saw me following Clarivan. Everyone is so scared of Clarivan. Of course, he wasn't that rounded personality, and although his eyes were a little bit spicier than others, I looked at Clarivan. Well, I don't understand. It's definitely a handsome face because he doesn't smile and has a strong cold impression. Of course, I can concentrate on the lecture well because the content is good, but there are also some because Clarivan is handsome. Everyone is so scared of Clarivan. Is that right, sir? Clarivan shrugs at me. I do not know. I think the lady is a little special, but is that so? Clarivan did not answer anymore and took the lead. However, I didn't like to walk away alone because I couldn't catch up. Rather, I walked slowly, looking like I had come out for a walk. He holding back, it is to consider myself who cannot walk as fast as an adult. Look at this. This person is such a good person. Asterisk, asterisk, asterisk. I tried to put up with it, but I finally yawned out. I saw two people in the meeting eagerly, stealing the tears running in the corners of their eyes. But then, isn't it no longer a business for the common people? My father said dissatisfiedly to Clarivan. This price is a price that a commoner with a little money can afford. Clarivan replied in an easygoing voice. Yes, it's a price that only those with money can afford. That's what I mean. The focus of this business is not in terms of price. Quality, it's in quality. No matter how good quality it is, what's the use of it if people don't buy it? For a while already, the meetings have been spinning around. At first, I was surprised too. He said that he was a person who could be such a passionate person for something. Until the meeting started, my father, who seemed to be struggling with Clarivan, suddenly took off his appearance and was fighting with Clarivan. But if my father was like fire, Clarivan was like ice. He was calmly and frankly refuting my father's burning idea and pouring cold water. Of course, that is why the two became a good match. Between my chin on the table and flipping the crumbs with my nails, my father and Clarivan also fell into a lull. Let's take a break. Woo! My father's face, sighing, while touching his face, looked very tired. I approached carefully and asked, Dad, are you okay? My father laughed weakly at my question and sat me on his lap with a shout. Tia, yeah, can Dad do it well? Well, the business he is doing right now is quite different from my father's natural personality. Last time, the Koroy Cotton project was the same, but at that time, everything happened to me. But this time, it was different. This project was led by my father from start to finish. Even the Lord was like that. It is not the money with Lombardi's label, but the money that an individual named Galliahan has collected so far. Of course, even if this business fails, it is possible because I am a Lombardi person who has no difficulty in living and can eat for a lifetime. Cheer up, Dad. Even though the words of a familiar nursery rhyme were spoken, I patted my father's shoulder with sincerity. It's cool to say that it's pre-made for someone to wear. I deliberately raised my hands and shouted exaggeratedly. Yes, in a word, the business that my father is planning now was a ready-to-wear business. It was the idea that he got when he made a prototype for the promotion during the last Koroy Cotton project and gave it to the nobility. You might think it's just a general apparel business, but the important thing is that there is no concept of ready-to-wear here yet. People will usually go to the dressing room to tailor their clothes. It's a pretty convenient system for those who buy clothes. Professional costume designers and tailors with many experiences visited the waiting room and everything is solved at once. Through consultation with a designer, I can make clothes in the shape I want using the fabric I want. Since it is made to fit my body, there is no need to worry about it. But that's why it's expensive. Even the nobles are not as financially capable as they are, and clothes are treated quite preciously. This is especially true for dresses that are colorful and delicate enough to wear when attending a banquet or special event because the material cost is not high. Even the nobles are not free from clothes, but the commoners are ugly. Those who can afford it look for inexpensive dressing rooms for the commoners, but if not, they make their own clothes at home. Because the clothes are made while taking off the fabric, the mother's skill sets the quality of the clothes of the household, creating a situation where it is impossible to laugh. Because of that, I was told that poor people often do not wash their clothes because they fear they will break if they rub their clothes frequently. In this situation, my father's idea is really groundbreaking. When I first heard of it, I really thought that my father was a huge genius. It is far more difficult than expected to see something too natural from a completely different perspective. Well, even if Clarivan quickly got on the boat, he said everything. We can no longer postpone setting the price, Clarivan said, signaling the end of the break. There are quite a lot of things to consider, such as the cost of ordering the craftsman guild, the price of making the pattern of the costume, and the cost of building materials. I got down from his lap and sat down on the chair next to them so they could talk comfortably. At that time, my eyes and Clarivan's eyes meet. It was the same as usual, but it was a different look. But it's also for a while. With a single blink of an eye, the color disappeared. Did I see it wrong? Galyahan, please listen carefully. Clarivan, who turned his gaze away from me, said to my father. Galyahan, when I said that the store should be placed on the Haslot market, not Sidacunya, it was the judgment that the commoners would be more open to new ways of purchasing than the nobles. But this project should be directed towards those who want luxury, even among the customers. Huh? Wait a minute. I looked at Clarivan in amazement. This isn't it, but Clarivan is serious. There seemed to be no time for jokes to enter the eyes of my father. Hmm. My father began to think very carefully about Clarivan's appearance. It's a luxury product. No, father, that's not it. Yes, it should be a business for those who use the Hazlitt market but can use their own tons of money for something new. No, what's wrong with Clarivan? I was embarrassed, so I started sweating behind my back. Is it right to raise the price? Finally, my father wears his hand and complains. You've been doing well so far. This project should target the average middle class among the common people. So naturally, the price should be set at a lower price to make sense. A capable person will try new things to avoid the trouble of making his own clothes, but will not choose cheap clothing over tailored clothing in a clothing store. Clothes for special occasions will still fit all the time, but those who are willing to buy ready to wear clothes cheaply know that the designs can overlap with the everyday clothes they wear every day. Think carefully. It was Clarivan, I believed. You are trying to lead my father the wrong way. I waited until the end of the conversation. May either my father or Clarivan notice the blind spots of this opinion. However, the moment my father opened his mouth, after deep consideration, he had to intervene. Then, as expected, raising the price. Well, but I would hate it. As I hurriedly shouted, my father looked at me with amazement. I can't help it, I said as much as possible. Isn't it that someone else might wear the same clothes as me? So I'm just going to buy clothes that match only with mine. Is that so? Because I originally bought clothes in the dressing room. He nodded a little, saying, That's right. So I think I need to lower the price of clothes so that you can buy it easily and wear it comfortably. As usual, I just wanted to give you a hint, but I couldn't take the risk of going wrong again. I looked at my father and said in a strong tone, And among the commoners, there are more people without money than the rich, right? In a word, it means the market is bigger. Of course, there is little profit left from selling a suit, but we shouldn't ignore it. The advantage of the early ready-to-wear was right there. I think Florentius' words make sense. What do you think, Clarivan? My father looked back at Clarivan as if asking for an opinion. I also turned my head towards him with my father, and I saw the laughter spreads on Clarivan's face like in slow motion. It wasn't just laughing lightly, as if passing by. It wasn't even the usual cold, ridicule laugh. It was a bright smile that was really happy and laughed. Clarivan? I heard my father's confused voice. I was surprised, too. This is the first time I've ever seen a person named Clarivan Pellet laugh like this in my previous life. No, I didn't even know it in my dreams that he was a person who could smile brightly in this way. Clarivan was still smiling, disregarding the astonishment beyond our surprising face, and I was at the end of his gaze. Surprised by Clarivan's picturesque smile, I had no time to think about it. At that time, from the seat I was sitting on, Clarivan came up to me. Flinch. Surprised, I stiffened for a moment, but I didn't do anything about it. Clarivan just walked to me, and Clarivan knelt in front of me and lowered himself. It happened before my embarrassed father even said anything, and it was my sleeves where Clarivan's fingertips touched. To be precise, it was a ribbon on the sleeve. The knot was loose, and the string was fluttering without knowing when it was released. Clarivan grabbed the end without saying anything. Long white fingers made a fluttering sound, making pretty knots, and quickly made a nice ribbon. Go, thank you. Clarivan laughed as he looked up at me in my small voice. Good words, young lady. I couldn't take my eyes off that face, because those finely folded eyes seemed to contain more meaning than I see. A little while ago, something seemed to have changed in him. I sat down, looking at Clarivan like that. End of chapter 34. Chapter 35. The kitchen of the Lombardi mansion was noisy from the dawn. This was because today is a day for the immediate family of Lombardi to gather together and have lunch. My father, who seemed to have no time to breathe because he was so busy, was at home without going to work today. It was because I couldn't be late for a family meal after a long time. In fact, in any case, it was the grandfather's command to take the family-like appearance between families as important as Lombardi's business thrives. Thanks to this, our family, who skipped breakfast and did a simple trick to soothe her stomach, borrowed the hands of the employees to dress it up. It seems that other families are hiring people to help with their decorating, but we didn't feel the need to do that. Sometimes, when such an important day came, it was enough to get help at that time. Our Tia is getting prettier day by day. My father smiled and said to me in the mirror. I did not say anything of humility. It's pretty even when I see it with my own eyes. Dad is so cool too. These are not empty words either. My father, dressed up for a long time, is so cool that my eyes are rounded. It is even better to see a family who resembles each other like this. Probably more so in the eyes of others. You can see that the maids who helped us to make up our clothes couldn't take their eyes off my father and me with their red faces. Lombardy sometimes looks better than anyone else just by trimming it like this. So do you really need to have a separate employee? My shoulders shrugged. Come on, let's go, Tia. I walked, holding a large hand that tenderly extended toward me. Father's hands were big and warm. The weather was very sunny, and the bright sunlight seemed to gently melt the interior of the splendid Lombardy mansion. Everything felt perfect until I arrived at the banquet hall, Eleanor Hall, and opened the door. Did you come? The butler waiting at the door greeted us politely, but the place where my gaze went was the other Lombardy people who came and sat behind it. Seeing that the top seat was empty, it seemed that grandfather had not yet arrived. Oh, I don't want to go in. Instinctively, I soothed my legs, trying to step backward, but I walked to the table as my father led me. As I got closer, I saw their familiar faces. To be precise, they were all faces that looked 20 years younger than the ones in my memory. Even though they are all like angels at first glance, they are wearing colorful clothes with beautiful appearances. I know that the inside is empty or darkly colored. Viz, who was sitting at the top of the seat, looked at me as if he felt my gaze. Honestly, as Lombardi's bloodline, as much as my father and the brother, his appearance is not ugly. However, I really hate the greed that was filled in my eyes that day. Woo wook, I wasn't feeling well, so I quickly looked away. Come on, Tia is here with other cousins. The table was divided into adults and children's tables. It was fortunate for me. I couldn't seem to get any appetite when I saw Viz on his wife Sarah, who could still feel the gaze looking at this side. Tia, sit here next to us. The twins who had come first greeted me with chatter as usual. Okay, the two will take good care of Tia. Do not worry, he responds energetically. My father smiled warmly to see if he was relieved. See you soon, Tia. My father, who said goodbye and kissed my head, soon moved away to the table over there. In the seats where both pairs were sitting, only my father looked a little lonely, alone. With a small sigh, I turned to sit down. Tia will be sitting next to me. No, it's my seat next to me. The twins were arguing over me. Father, who cares who? Always good friends and a good way to kill you and Mariron. Often quarrel over my problems. Now, two people don't fight. I've been reading all over, but the twins who had already gotten sick didn't seem to be able to hear my voice. It's my turn this time. Where's that? The voice gets louder and more. This was when I intervened between the two energetic people because it seemed that the attention would really be focused. Gilium, Mayron. As someone walked into the banquet hall, the twins' names were called in a harsh voice. It was Vestian Skulls, the father of the two. The smile didn't disappear from the face that was approaching with a big step, but the atmosphere wasn't clear. What are you doing loudly? And Vestian's gaze approached me. You are again, yes? Vestian's attitude is strange. The attitude is completely different from when I was with Aunt Shannonette. He glances at me as if he were seeing a headache, and he even pushes his shoulders out of my sight. It was a light gesture, but my body took a step back due to the power of an adult. Vestian, who removed me from the twins' side, told the sons, Didn't father tell you that you should be polite at today's family gatherings? Yes, I'm sorry. The twins, who became gloomy as they were scolded, bowed their heads. Yes, I trust you. Vestian said that for the last time and walked to the table over there. Haha, sorry I'm late. It was a pleasant voice that I could not imagine the person who looked down at me coldly a while ago. Yes, that's what I know of Vestian's thoughts. As if I had dreamed for a while, I sat down next to the twins, who had quietly returned to their seats. Of course, the two returned with their usual playful faces, wondering when they were depressed. I asked them carefully, Hey, did I do anything wrong? The twins tilted their heads at my question just before. Vestian, because I think he is a little angry with me. Only then the two nodded, saying, Then he noticed his surroundings and answered me. It's not that Tia was wrong, because my father originally hated cousins. The cousins? Do you hate it? It wasn't easy to understand what I meant. Yeah, my father said he hated Lombardy. Gilio hesitates and says, What do you do if you say that? Mayron was frightened and scolded Gilio, but Tia is okay. Yes, but I won't tell anyone. Don't worry, I said to reassure them. Myron was relieved as if he had become more comfortable with my promise, and whispered in a small voice as if making excuses. Father doesn't like us playing with Tia either. Okay, Aunt Shannonette knows that. Not surprisingly, the twins shook their heads at the same time. My father said it was only the secrets of the men of the Scots family. The Scots family men. Obviously, the twins using Lombardi's name, or the last name, were not changed, but it was not appropriate for Vestian, who introduces himself as Vesti and Lombardi, of course. I turned my head and glanced at the table where the adults were sitting around. Ha ha, ho ho, laughter was flowing about what kind of joke Vestian made. However, there is no lie in the words of the twins and the touch that pushed me away. However, the smile of Shannonette was holding Vestian's hand and laughing together did not show any expression. Shannonette, as I know it, she was a person who would rather go neatly than perform such actions, as in previous life, but one thing is for sure, that Vestian Stoltz might not be the kind of carefree son-in-law I was thinking of. It was then, a rumbling voice came from across the large table. Hey, Half. It's been a long time again. When I looked away, I saw Belsac laughing at me. It bursts and seems to have been dying for a while. Today, my face is full of unfortunate laughter. I can't grind the thread for the needle. Even today, Astalio, who is sticking to Belsac's side, also seemed to be steadfast. Hey, can't you hear me calling? When I didn't answer, Belsac growled in an even harsher voice. But do people say that the dog is barking? I focused on breaking bread before meals, as if I couldn't hear anything like that. That girl is really... Belsac, who was getting even more feverish, groaned and looked around. Then he took one of the green grapes in front and threw them at me. Took the green peel that fell on my face, rolled over the white tablecloth. You were still less beaten. I had no intention of being patient. I was thinking of paying back the same. So I grabbed the three freshly opened green grapes in one hand. But before I even threw it, something blew up in Belsac's face. Squash! Buttered bread pretended to stick to Belsac's face and slowly slipped down. Fuha! As I smiled and looked at the side where the bread had been blown away. It was Mayron, who still had a knife in his hand that had been buttered. What are you doing with this now? Ugh! Belsac, who had peeled the bread from his face, became angry. But another piece of bread flew away, this time sticking to the other face. Needless to say, it was Gillia's work. Well, what? Why are you two doing that? Belsac shouted unfairly as she wiped her greasy face with a napkin. You threw the fruit at Tia first, right? So you thought you were playing while throwing food, right? As the twins talked, they scornfully sarcastic. Belsac groaned through the door. I played with that lowly one and both changed. Again, this is why I have to get along with the right person. However, the twins listened to the words and rubbed their ears with their fingers. Belsac disassembled for a while, then said with a bloody smile, You two, would you like to see me well? What is he saying? It could have been just dismissed as Belsac's common buzz, but there seemed to be something. It was even more of an elated attitude. Belsac said, looking at me and the twins. From now on, I have been granted permission from my grandfather to go to the Imperial Palace once a month with a special request from Her Highness the Empress. End of chapter 35.